Good morning, everyone. This is Ron Visconti, and the topic today is blogging to further your business brand. And we're going to be with Nancy Branca in just a few moments, but we have a few announcements. She's great. She's given lots of talks for phase 2 careers, and she's going to give a talk, by the way, I'll remind at the very end, on self-publishing. In August, for the Redwood City Library, we're doing a program on self-publishing, and she could talk about that as well. But this is a joint program with Renaissance. If Teresa is here, I'll let her make a few statements. If not, I'll forge ahead. If you're new to phase 2 careers, we're a resource for the over 40 professional. We've been around since 2010. We usually do 3 things: all kinds of job search topics, all kinds of career transition or career development. And finally, we do some small business programs with Renaissance. And just to remind you, a couple of real good business programs coming up next week. Next Tuesday, we're going to have a business mixer with Renaissance. And what we're going to do is we're going to have some breakaway workshops. We're going to have some breakout rooms if you want to mingle with people on marketing, networking. We're going to have some career resources. And Renaissance is going to give away a free Chromebook to anyone that attends. Not to everyone. One person will win that. But that's going to be next Tuesday. Do sign up for that because that's going to be a very special program. And I'm doing an orientation on Wednesday, the day after, if you wanted to start a small business. Oh, and tomorrow, of course, we're doing a program on creating achievement stories. So when you go for that interview or you talk about your business, you need to have some of those stories lined up. That's key, and that's with Dr. David Petrove. So just to tell you a moment about Renaissance, and then we'll get into the program. They're a nonprofit that we've worked with for 9 years. They're Bay Area wide, and they're there to economically empower and increase the entrepreneurial capacities. Since 1985, they've helped 15,000 businesses get going. And you could see some of the facts and figures. 76% are women, 75% women of people of color, 68% business start. So they got their business started once they get going. And very impressive, people have a start rate, survival rate. And here's just some of the locations that they're in. The real large office is in south of Market. I work or help the Mid-Peninsula, which is in East Palo Alto, and we're going to be helping them start. Phase 2 will be working with Renaissance and helping their new South San Francisco office, which is pretty exciting. And Teresa, if you have any questions about programming, that's her email address and her phone number. So Renaissance, do check them out if you're interested in small business. And now our speaker at hand, Nancy's given lots of talks for phase 2. She's fun. She's a pro. She knows a lot. She's very helpful. She's founded a program called Startup Decoder, and she can talk about that. She's previously been the chief content officer for Bizly, was the managing editor of American Express Executive Travel Magazine, director of communications for the Access Group, and a graduate of the Fighting Irish. Wow, you have it all. Are you a big fan, Nancy?
I'm not into it. I mean, I love the school, but just not into the football.
You know, I thought you were going to say that, but I still had to ask. Well, for all of those things, I would like to welcome Nancy Branca for talking about blogging and how to make that an effective tool in your business. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, Ron, and thank you for the introduction. And I will share my screen. It's saying it will stop other screens sharing.
Correct.
Continue, yes. Okay, so we're here today to talk about blogging, and it's something that I'm pretty passionate about and that I've done for quite a while. And so I'm especially happy that Ron suggested this topic. As he mentioned, that's me, Nancy Branca. I started my first blog probably 12 or 13 years ago when my oldest son was just a tween or just becoming a teenager. And it was a personal passion project. And the blog was called Parent Over Shoulder. And it was about parenting and technology and dealing with kids and technology. And I kept that up for, I don't know, maybe 5 years, again, just for fun. I've had another personal blog that I did once. It was actually a Christmas gift for my husband, which was, his name is Joe, and it was called The Daily Cup of Joe. And every day I would just post a little note to him. I have done business blogs. When I worked for Bizly, we had a blog that I sometimes wrote. I also outsourced it to freelancers as well. And now with Startup Decoder, which I'll tell you a little bit about later, a blog is an important part of my business. So that is a little about me. But first I wanted to just kind of back it up a little bit and talk about where blogs have come from, just so that we're all kind of on the same page. So the first blog apparently appeared in 1997, and they became more popular towards 1999, which is when the term weblog, sort of like web blog put together, was used, and which eventually became shortened to blog. And an important thing to remember about that is that it was very clear then, and it's less clear now, but sort of a basic organizing principle for blogs is that they are organized by date. So they're originally kind of like in a diary form, a log. But even if it's not apparent to you today, when you look at something that's a blog, it is all in the background organized by date. And usually always with the most recent post at the top or showing first, unless the background has told it to do something different. When blogs first started, they were both personal, kind of like what I was doing, or they became popular in politics. And then eventually, of course, businesses came along and started using blogs for business. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot with social media, because I think you're seeing now in the last couple of years, social media is becoming kind of like what blogs, I believe, first were. I feel like in the last year, for example, Twitter with the threads has evolved from these short little bursts to a lot of people doing almost like thought pieces through threads, which are sometimes very long. And the same thing with Instagram. A lot of businesses will post on Instagram really like articles. So I think in a parallel to blogs, social media is kind of becoming a similar type of communication vehicle. So first question is to why blog? Because I don't think blogging is right for every person or for every business. And it can be a time expensive and money expensive. So it's important to really give some thought to that before jumping in, I guess. But the big reason to do it is it's a way to connect with customers that you can't probably do as effectively in any other way. I think we all have a sense now that customer connection is really important. And we're hearing a lot now about storytelling and how important storytelling is for really making connections. And so a blog is a really great place to tell stories, whether it's about your products, your staff, your origin. But they're able to do that. Blogs are able to do that in a way that advertising, for example, can't, or a flat website can't. You can also give them additional product information. And then importantly, you're staying on their minds. You have a way to keep getting in front of them. And something that differentiates blogging, I think, from social media writing is that it can be evergreen, and it can live on your website and keep giving back to you with this connection with the customer for a long period of time. It doesn't go away, in a timeline. So, once you have it on your website, it can attract new customers for quite a long time. Some numbers that I think kind of tell the story. Blogging is the third most common content marketing strategy after video and ebooks. And 55 businesses that blog get 55% more website visitors than businesses that don't. And this is an important piece that I was just talking about, that once you have that blog post on your website, you can attract new customers through Google search or other means, so they're getting to you through the blog rather than some other way. And then 70% of people would rather learn about a company through articles than advertisements. And I think this is pretty clear to all of us. I'm going to show you my blog in a minute. It's at startupdecoder.com, and it's an integral part of my business. Startup Decoder is a place for people who are mid and late career who work in tech. And because I'm a writer and editor, my kind of main focus is content creation. So the blog is the way to keep the content there fresh and to keep building it. I'm also going to show you some other examples of blogs that I think are interesting, and different types of businesses and what they're doing and how I think they're doing it. So to do that, oops. I want to share a different screen. Hold on. So this is my blog. I'll show you in a second my blog, but this is my website, Startup Decoder. So just some basic information about it. By the way, I wrote a novel that's also dealing with this content for people who are mid and late career. And then the blog posts show up down here. I do post once a week, and I'm pretty disciplined about it. Every Thursday, I do a post, and I'll talk about schedule a little later. But then I also wanted to show you that then all the posts live here under articles. A lot of blogs or a lot of websites will use the word blog there, and I just chose not to. But the way I have this built out, the different categories of content, if you were to click on ageism, like all the articles about ageism would come up. If you just click on articles, hopefully. All the articles should come up. Oh, here we go. It was just slow. So again, this kind of gets to what I was mentioning earlier about the organizing principle being date. So they all appear together here, organized by date. So that's my blog. Some others that I wanted to show you. This one I think is pretty.
Anna said she can't see your screen for some reason.
Oh, okay. Could you see it, Ron?
Yeah, I could. Can everyone see her screen? Just do a little nod if you have. Okay, I'm getting lots of nods, so it might be from your end, Anna.
Yeah, I think Anna's using a phone. So sorry about that, Anna. So this woman, Elizabeth, that has this small business, she does consulting and something I'd never heard of, but garden coaching. And I just love this little blog because it's very simple. And it's a great way to connect because it's very personal. And I love this, the concept for this story. Sometimes we make mistakes. I mean, I was curious what was going on here. So the big mistake was that the baby possum got into their rat trap, I guess, in their urban garden. So she has a lot of photos that obviously she's done herself, but they look very professional. And I think I'll talk a little bit more about photos later, but they're really important. And I really like what she's done here. And it's all very personal. So to me, this creates a great connection to someone who just stumbled upon this site and maybe was looking for someone to help them with gardening. I mean, I would hire Elizabeth in a nanosecond, just based on what I'm seeing here. Let's see.
So you had a question, you're going to get into this, but Scott wanted to know where you get your images.
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, I get mine I use stock images, free stock images, and I get them from Pexels, P-E-X-E-L-S, which is a big site. The stock images companies seem to be consolidating. So I have gotten them from Unsplash in the past, which I believe Canva owns now. So I hope that answers the question. So Ron, I need your help here. My tabs, the Zoom controls, whoops, I got it. I moved the Zoom controls to be able to see my tabs. Okay, so this next one I wanted to show you is Voyage. It's a very small company that is an online retailer of goods that are made in Alaska. And their customers are people that have either been to Alaska recently, for example, on a cruise, or have an interest in Alaska. They've had a tough year because cruises to Alaska have been canceled last summer and so far most of this. So their blog has been very important. So they, besides connecting with customers, I think an important way to do that, besides being personal, is to provide information that they can truly use. And so this year they've done a lot of stories on how to enjoy Alaska when you're not on a cruise. But there was another story they did recently I thought was really great. And that was this. It's an article about Robert Miller, and he's a marine biologist by trade in Southeast Alaska. And he got into sea otter, using sea otter fur to make hats and mitts based on this native tradition, which is from his own family. And it's a really interesting story. And when I first read this a few weeks ago, I was kind of blown away by what he did to teach himself how to take these otter skins and seal skins and create goods from them, and the difficulties in sewing them, and why sea otter fur is one of the densest furs, and so it's the warmest, and the Iditarod racers, with that dog race, I know there's a better word for it, but that they use these gloves. I was totally pulled in by this. And as I was reading it, I noticed I was thinking like, oh, I think my older son might really like mittens from this guy for Christmas. So just based on this story, I had a connection, and I was actually thinking about, well, maybe I should buy something from this site. So I thought that was very well done. The next site is that of a coach, career transition coach. Some of you might know him, John Tarnoff. And he has a blog that is very professional and sort of high-level business. He has a similar setup as I do, where he's categorized the content. And I'd say he posts maybe once a month. Again, it's very professional. It looks like right on brand for his type of business. It's very easy to find the information, and this is less personal and much more content value in terms of take some information here that you can use right away. Next up is Seth's blog. You may be familiar with this. Seth Godin is a marketing guru, I think you could rightfully say. He's written more than 10 best-selling books on marketing. He is an avid blogger. He blogs every day and has for years. I saw an article that was dated 2017, or I guess it was his blog post in 2017, saying it was his 7,000th post. And he says something I think is very interesting, and I totally agree with, that blogging is a way for, it actually helps you generate ideas, because when you have to write something, ideas come to you, and when you're in the habit of it, those ideas come more readily. So that's why he blogs every single day. And also very simple layout. And he also uses it to support his business, which is, I think you'd say speaking, writing, and then he has, you'll see on the left side rail there, he has some workshops and courses that are high end. And then the last, another that's homegrown, Yoga Garden in San Francisco. This is a very humble blog, but I think it's very effective. In the recent days, I didn't check to see how often they post, but they are profiling their teachers, which I thought was a great idea. It creates connection, and is easy content to create, basically. Earlier in their history, they have some other types of content that is a little more varied, and I think that's also really great. I did click on this Best Yoga Mat article, and it was really pretty helpful. So those are some examples of blogs that, for small businesses, that I thought were pretty effective. So there's a big but with this. Blogging does take time, and it may take money, depending on how you decide to do it. So it's important to really give some consideration, as I mentioned, to whether you should do it or not. But if you do decide you'd like to do it, I want to go over some things to know as you get started. First off, the blog has to live somewhere online, and the guiding principle would be that you'd want to have the greatest connection to a website that you already have, or wherever else you're doing business online. So it's great to start where you are, depending on where your website lives. I do mine on WordPress, and which I'll talk about in a minute, but a lot of smaller businesses use Shopify and Squarespace and Wix. I know Shopify has an easy ability to add a blog. Squarespace, depending on your template, may. And Wix, I'm not unsure of, honestly. I know Wix, you can add a subscription to a blog, a paid subscription, but I don't know if they have a way to set up a regular blog within your Wix site. If you're someone whose business, for example, is consulting or services like that within the business community, thought leadership may be your goal. And if so, and if you don't want it to be linked directly on your site, you could consider blogging on Medium or even on LinkedIn. Medium is maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old. It was created by the founder of Blogger, and it's a really pleasant environment. I did blog on Medium for a while. It's very easy to use. It's well respected for business people. I would say most of the content there is for business. And theoretically, you have the benefit of an audience that's built in. They have sort of a homepage where people can find you. You might be served up to them. So you theoretically could find new readers there. If you're looking to blog completely separately from a website, another WordPress is the largest blog site, I would say. It's also, of these last three, the most challenging to use. Blogger and Tumblr are super easy, but probably a little less respected business-wise. As I said, I do use WordPress and I really like it. It's important to be mindful that there are two WordPresses. There are two, within the WordPress family, there are two different WordPresses. One is WordPress.org, which is what I use, and I would think most businesses, larger businesses that are on WordPress. And by the way, WordPress is the platform that's behind, I don't know, something like 85% of all the websites in the world right now. You won't see it, but it's driving it, or it's running it. So as I was saying, that's WordPress.org. It is becoming more user-friendly, I think, and more graphically oriented. So you don't necessarily need to know HTML or anything to use it, although that's helpful. There's also WordPress.com, which is their attempt. I think I said that wrong. No, sorry. WordPress.org is the more sophisticated one. WordPress.com is the one that's meant to be more user-friendly and kind of simpler to use. And it can be a one-stop shop. You can get your URL there, your domain there, you can kind of do everything from soup to nuts there in a simple way. Obviously, you want to define your goals. There can be a number of different kinds of goals for blogs. You can attract a new business. Somebody might see on social media that you've posted something and then click over to your site and become a new customer. Same thing with Google. In a Google search, you might come up. You can solidify current customers by connecting with them in this way that you might not be able to otherwise with your site. And you can show thought or brand leadership, as I mentioned previously. And then I think it's important to think about how this links up with your other marketing efforts. Is this something that you can have them play off of each other and maximize the other things that you're doing? It's probably shouldn't be the only thing that you do. And the big question then is, do you want to do it yourself or outsource? So you can do it. And this is something that I think you should consider if it's something you'd really enjoy. And I do think that's maybe the most important factor here. If you want to do it yourself, would you dread doing it, or was this something you'd like to learn and would enjoy doing? Because it is an ongoing commitment. And then, of course, do you already have, or can you learn the skills that are required? And I'll go over the skills in a bit.
You had a question from someone, and you brought up several times thought leadership. Do you want to explain that to Sarima and anyone else?
Yeah, let's see. Thought leadership is when you're writing about your area of expertise and sharing that. So it's kind of demonstrating that you're an expert in a certain field or area. And it's often people will be writing kind of leading edge type thinking, again, to demonstrate that they're thought leaders in their area of expertise. So that would be not necessarily retail. So it'd be more like a business consultant, or in my field, which is careers. It would be, what's the latest thing happening with remote versus in-person offices, and what are my thoughts about how that will shake out? So it's sort of like your personal, it's an opinion piece usually, but based on your expertise. So you can have somebody else do your blogging. I have done this as well when I worked at Bisley. I outsourced this to freelance writers. And so this is a viable thing. It's come down quite a bit in price. I think you could expect to pay a decent freelancer between $50 and $100 for an article that might be between 500 and 1,000 words. And you can find very good freelancers, on websites like Upwork or Fiverr. And most freelance writers now, I think, are also very adept at posting. So taking the file and uploading it to your site, if you're willing to share your login credentials with them as well. So they can also take over that aspect of it.
I have a question related to that, Nancy. Is it original content, or can they use this blog in many ways so they could get an economy out of it?
They meaning the
The
owner, the business owner?
The blogger that you're paying.
Oh, no, because you're paying them, you own the content.
Okay, so they can't use that for another blog.
Correct. So the skills that you'd be needing, first off, is content ideas, which seems obvious, but this I think is super important. When I was an editor, I saw an interesting survey of professional editors, and the question was, what is the most important aspect of a really successful story? And I was surprised at the answer. Over 50% said it was the story idea, which surprised me because it way beat out brilliant writing, extensive research, and all the kinds of things that actually go into the writing of the story. So the idea is really important. Again, you want to make it some personal, or like an idea that people can really connect with. And I, as I mentioned, I blog every week, and it's amazing how many weeks I sit down and write, and I really don't have an idea. And so I've started keeping a list of story ideas, because when you sit in front of the blank screen, sometimes you can't think of all the ideas you had the previous week. Obviously, you need to have some writing skills, but they don't have to be super fancy skills. Nobody's expecting you to have great American novel level of writing. But you do, need to be careful about grammar. There's great assistance from apps like Grammarly. And it's great to have somebody else read your work just to proofread or help you out, let's say. And then, as I mentioned, there's the second part of this, which is uploading the files to wherever they're going to live. So you do need a certain comfort with technology to be able to post these. It's not hard, especially sites like Shopify or Squarespace are very user-friendly, but this is an important part of the job, and that includes sourcing images, and which we mentioned there's great sites out there where you can get free images, and then uploading those images. And then lastly, these are soft skills, but they're really important. Project management and commitment. Project management, especially if you're going to hire somebody to do the writing, you'll need to help keep the balls in the air and help them land. And then commitment, which is actually something I wanted to talk about a little more depth, which is consistency is super important. So I think one of the most important aspects of blogging is that you show up regularly. Your readers are going to get used to that and want that. And it's harder to do than you would think. So, a valuable thing at the beginning is to think about, how often do you want to do this? I'm weekly, plenty of people do it monthly or quarterly, and it's probably wise to estimate on the more generous side. Like, if you think you can do it weekly, then you might think about, well, maybe actually I should start with monthly, because I think it's better to be more conservative when you're starting. Most blogs do get abandoned. So if you can be consistent, you will get ahead and you will keep that mind share. And then finally, deadlines, as a writer, this is an important part of my mentality, but deadlines will keep you disciplined. And, there's an old saying for writers, I hate to write, but I love to have written. And so the writing part of it can be a slog. So I have found it very useful to have a deadline where I know that I have to have something posted on Thursday. And even though probably nobody is going to notice if I don't, it's important to me to keep that deadline. Otherwise, I've done it myself with other situations, and I've seen other people do this where you miss it's kind of like exercise. You miss the first time and then maybe the second time, and then before you know it, you've kind of abandoned the effort. So I use deadlines to keep the blogging going. And like anything, you're going to figure out how you're going to measure success. I think these are pretty obvious, but again, the last one, I do think it's important to consider whether you enjoy it or not. And then lastly, you want to take your work and make sure that it is seen by as many people as possible. And the first part of that is your job, how you set it up to attract as many eyeballs as you can. So importantly, you're going to need to use at least one image. There's a lot of studies that show that articles with images get significantly more traction than ones without. You're also going to need to make it reader friendly for two reasons. The first is because you appreciate your customers and you want them to be able to easily read it. So the other reason is because Google also likes reader friendly articles. And so you'll rank higher if you're reader friendly. So that can be things like using subheads or using fairly short sentences or easy to read language, shorter headlines, things like that. And a big part of this is has to do with search engine optimization or SEO, which you probably know something about, but it's important to learn a little bit about it. You don't need to be advanced in your SEO knowledge, but to have the basic principles down, I think is really important if you want to maximize what you're writing. I use a WordPress plugin called Yoast, Yoast, and which puts at the bottom of the article before I publish it. It puts helps me see what I can do to improve the article so it'll rank better. So it could be change the length of the headline or the blurb, or put the alt text on the images. There's a whole list, almost like a checklist to go through. If you're not using WordPress, Yoast is still a really good resource. They have a ton of great content on their website about how to optimize for search engine. This is just a little aside, but one of the best things you can do is have an email list. I think there is not a marketer in the world that would disagree that having your own email list is essential, because you own that list, and it's ultimately the only way that you can get to your customers directly. So if you already have that, fantastic. And if you already have a newsletter or some kind of regular way that you get to your customers directly, that's fantastic. And a blog can be an essential part of your newsletter or what you push out with your email list to customers. So for example, I do have a weekly newsletter, and it has probably 6 little articles and links to different appropriate topics for my content. But the first one is always what I published this week on Startup Decoder. And that link is by far the most clicked link in all of my newsletters. So I know it works. You can also, I know some people will just, when they write an article, will just directly email customers or their email list and just say, here's a new article. So that's another way to do it. And then, of course, social media is a really great way to amplify what you're doing. As a habit, each time you publish an article, you should write a social media post on whatever platform you like and link to it. And it's not a bad idea to do this multiple times. I think we get nervous that we're like over pushing our stuff, but you know, especially with timelines, a lot just depends on when you hit somebody, you know, when they're looking at their timeline. So there's nothing wrong with posting to social media several times about a single article. And another way to do this, one is to say, in case you missed it, it's like the second time you publish it. You can also take an article and break it up into pieces and maybe set it up in nice little graphics in Canva or something like that, or like take quotes out of it and create from one article. You could create 5 or 6 little pieces of content for social media. Anytime that you interview somebody for an article that you wrote or you mention someone, it's important to ask them to share in their social media circles. An example would be that the guy that makes the mittens out of sea otter fur, if he, assuming he has some kind of social media presence, it would have been important to ask him to share that as well. I have occasionally chosen to write about somebody or mention somebody in an article because I know they have strong social following, and then they naturally will share it as well. And then, as I mentioned with newsletters, anytime you have communication with customers, link to posts, and just make sure that you share your posts with your customers. Lastly, this is a quote that I really love from Seth: "Marketing is no longer about the stuff you make, but the stories you tell." And that's why I think blogging is so powerful, is because we can create these stories about the stuff we make. And so it just provides a deeper way to get to the people that you're hoping to get to. We can do questions in a second, but I wanted to make sure to give you my email address. If you're interested in blogging, or if you are blogging and have questions or whatever, I'm more than happy to correspond by email, or if you want to hop on a phone call, just hit me up and I'd be happy to talk through whatever you're facing. And also want to give a final plug for my novel, which you can find at startupdecoder.com.
It's a fun novel. It's great. And if you worked in the high-tech world, it's spot on.
Thanks, Ron. You're always my best cheerleader.
So we have several questions and comments. If you want to stop sharing, and we could just go to comments. How do you mention Fiverr? How's it spelled?
Can you repeat what?
You mentioned a resource. Is it Fiverr?
Oh yeah, Fiverr. Fiverr, I think it is, or Fivr.
Oh, okay.
It's a site where you can find people to do tasks, ranging from putting up pictures in your living room to professional tasks. Oh, thanks, Scott. Yeah, 2 R's, Fiverr.
And this is from Sarama. She says, regarding grammar and maybe ideas that change, which we may want to edit long after posting. This happened to me on an assignment blog post for her school. The grammar is horrible on that post, and also some of my ideas shifted since. What's the rule on back editing?
I think it's done. That sounds fairly extensive. I would probably make add a line at the end saying this post has been revised to reflect, whatever, and then put a date when it was revised. You could also do a full revision and repost it, and not seeing your site, so not knowing kind of how that's set up, but I would think about reposting it with a note at the top saying, this, things have changed or whatever. And this is a topic I covered previously, but wanted to update.
Okay, good point. This is from Anna on wordpress.org versus .com. Really great points, Nancy. .com won't allow you to upload plugins. That's
Yeah,
her
good to know.
And Sarama had living ghost flower essences for grieving the end of connection. Do you mind unmuting and explaining yourself about that, Sarama?
Yeah, sorry, it's done. There's no need to go to the link. That was the post that I was referring to, the assignment for herb school, and with the horrible grammar that I am so embarrassed by now. But I think Nancy answered my question beautifully. Thank you.
Okay, I
Yeah,
just want to
thanks.
make sure we had clarity. Anna says, which expand your features, and if you're going 100% free, you'll get ads display on your site, and you won't get money if someone clicks on them. WordPress will.
No. Yeah, I have to say I've never used advertising or any platform that put ads up, so that, yeah, it doesn't sound too great.
And Scott has a question. Have you used LinkedIn Boost to publish a blog?
I have not. That's a really good question. And I have not published at all on LinkedIn, honestly. I considered it at the beginning just because my topic is so appropriate for LinkedIn. But I have read that if you, and because I want my my content to start on my site, I have read that if your content is posted multiple places, that it's demoted by Google.
So any questions? So we're up to date here on the questions and the comments. Any questions that you have, either raise your hand or put it in the chat and we'll get to you. So you've been in the field for many years. So we have a question here, and this is from Nora. Go right ahead, ask your question and unmute yourself, Nora.
Yes, hi. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Nancy, for all this wonderful information. My main question is, what do you do when you have too many ideas?
Oh.
Like so many things from all over the place, like you have an opinion about everything and you want to write about everything. How do you, funnel that into something useful, or do you decide on just one thing?
Yeah, I mean, what I would do is I would try to add a little structure because you are going to be limited in what you can actually do. So, and you're probably going to be so overwhelmed with so many good ideas that then you end up not doing something, right? So
Right.
I would make a schedule, like, tell myself, okay, I'm going to post once a month or once a week if you're feeling ambitious. And I would start a list of your ideas and then, allow yourself to pick one of the ideas each week or each month or whatever your schedule is. But if you can impose a structure on how often you're going to post, then you're more likely to actually start and do it. And then one by one, go through your ideas.
So is it okay to have like a blog that's has where you're talking about like parenting if you're a parent, and then you're talking about, I don't know, immigration rights if you're into that, and just like so many different topics or areas of interest that that I might have, or do you recommend like structuring a blog on one main theme or one main interest that you might have?
Well, I guess it depends what your goal is. So if it's for a business, I would stick to whatever the area of the business is, possibly with an occasional diversion. If you have a passion topic, you could occasionally add that and say, this is just something I'm very passionate about. but I would stick to the business because you're doing it for customers, either for the just connection that we already have or whatever. If you still have other ideas that you want to get across, you could do a personal blog as well. And a personal blog can cover anything. But I would just.
Okay, so I could have 2 blogs.
Yeah, exactly.
2 blogs with personal stuff and another one for business.
Yeah, I love
Got
your
it.
enthusiasm.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you for that,
Thank you.
that question. So we have a question from Matt, but first we'll get to you, Anna. What's your question? You want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, driving. I don't know if you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, Nancy, thank you so much. First of all, this was amazing. On the question before about whether to publish on LinkedIn, I was just thinking of automation tools like Social Bakers and Strong Social, I think it's called. And these allow for, you have an article you're thinking of to publish on your blog, and you can actually, sorry about that, schedule and post across several platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, and your blog. And I think I'm curious about your opinion, Nancy. Do you think these are relevant? These are useful to really repurpose the content of your blog post and make it suitable for several social media platforms?
I do. I'm not a big fan of the type of automation where the same content goes to all the platforms. And the reason is because I feel that each of the platforms has its own vibe, if you will, or way that people communicate. So for example, it's pretty easy to see somebody that took an Instagram post and auto posted it to Twitter, and it just doesn't quite fit. So to me, if you have the time, it's better to be more thoughtful with the specific, to tweak specifically for the medium, and not totally automate that. I don't know. That's just my style. I know people do it other ways, but that's my style, is to do a little less, but more thoughtful.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the question. Now, Matt has a bigger question about how to monetize a blog.
Oh, that's the ultimate question, right? Yeah. So I have not pursued the obvious way is advertising. There are services. If you have decent traffic, that could be helpful. If you have a certain
and what do you consider to be decent traffic, Nancy?
I don't even know anymore. I mean, one of the metrics that I have paid attention to as an author is book publishers won't really even want to talk to you unless you have 10,000 followers in different social media platforms. So I'm not sure about website traffic. I'm sure a quick Google search will tell you. The other thing that you could do that takes more hands-on work, but ultimately is a better experience for your readers, is to look at sponsorships. So to personally sell sponsorships. I have a friend who had a travel blog, Travel Skills, and he personally sold sponsorships to Alaska Airlines, for example. That's a lot of sales work, but it also creates a better experience for the users, because it ends up being better ad quality and more targeted to your actual readers.
Yeah, and Scott affirms that, says affiliate marketing is one way to monetize. Yeah,
that's a good idea. Affiliate marketing would be if you're reviewing products or services, and you're getting a commission basically for anybody that ends up buying. And that is, I think, is a business that is very respectable and reflects well on a blog rather than advertising, my personal opinion.
Right. Well, good point. Thank you for that, Scott. Any other questions about blogging? It seems like one of your takeaways is don't be overly ambitious, really set some realistic goals, right? Because I guess that looks really bad if you pare down rather than ramp up, right?
Yeah, honestly, will people notice? I'm not sure. Will, readers notice? But what I think is the more dangerous thing is then you end up stopping altogether. It's kind of, again, it's that exercise parallel where you miss a couple times at the gym, and then all of a sudden you feel you're not as strong, so you don't want to go to the gym, and then before you know it, it's been a year and you haven't been. And then you just give up your gym membership. So that's what I think is the more likely to happen, is that you'll feel defeated if you don't do what you thought you were going to do, if you were overly ambitious, and then end up not doing anything at all.
Now, you early on kind of mentioned something about creativity, how ideas come up. Is it hard to generate ideas for your blogs, or do they just come naturally in the course of the day?
To me, they just come naturally. It's usually from reading something else. And as I mentioned, I've started just writing ideas down because I don't know if this is a function of age or what, but I mean, I will know that during the week I had some really good ideas that I was excited about. And then when I'm sitting in front of the computer, I cannot think of them. So, collecting them in one spot I think is really helpful to me. And then also would help with Nora's issue of having too many ideas, because then once you see them on paper or on, in a file, you can see them all together and then start to pick out what the better ideas are. And one other thing I should mention in terms of creativity, I read a quote that really stuck with me about writing, which is, you don't, no, how does it go? You don't think to write, you write to think. The point being that I have found you can have a germ of idea, and then as you're writing it, it germinates further and becomes something as you're writing it that you didn't expect when you started. And so I think the act of writing helps you, I don't know, take ideas like places that you didn't expect them to go. So that's why I always try to just start writing. This goes to the discipline part of things. Just start writing with one idea, and then it's amazing how it can transform by the time you get to the end.
Well, thank you for that. This is from Doris. How many words should a blog be to engage but not bore?
I have read the number 600 words. Is an optimal length. It depends on your topic. I've seen like Seth Godin's blog posts, sometimes they're only, 200 words. And sometimes they're quite longer. So as a rule, I would keep it on the shorter side unless you have a very deep thought leadership type of piece.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Any other questions, final questions while we have Nancy here, and she's served on lots of panels. And by the way, do you want to tell everyone the panel you're going to be on in August for us on self-publishing?
Yes, so we're going to talk about self-publishing. As I mentioned, I published a novel last summer, self-published it, and am working on a couple additional. So I'm a huge fan of self-publishing, both these are fiction, but also in nonfiction. And self-publishing has changed a lot since I first started with it. And it's becoming a very interesting way to get your ideas across. And also, because this is a business environment that we're in right now, going back to the data in one of my slides, ebooks is one of the top content marketing strategies for businesses now. So self-publishing is really kind of coming into its own.
Nancy,
gonna
did
have-
you do everything self-publishing all yourself, or did you have somebody to help, fill in some of the gaps of some of your books?
Yeah, I did it all myself except a cover designer. I know there's all different ways to do it. I mean, I had the time and didn't want to pay for, I chose the time rather than the money quotient. I found it fairly easy to do. I'm pretty comfortable with technology, and I found it fairly easy to do.
So thank you for that. Doris wanted to mention, we'll get to your question, Sarama. Doris says a friend, retired lawyer turned writer who has self-published 5 mystery novels. I was invited to her book signing party at her house. Fun.
That is cool.
I had a friend that did fiction, historical figures. He was pretty known in the business community, and in his retirement years, he just started doing things on Genghis Khan and all kinds of historical figures, and was quite up in the ranking. Really fun. So do you want to ask Sarama your question?
Yes, thank you, Ron. Nancy, I have blogged in the past when I was in college. I'm not in college anymore. I'm in my late 30s and trying to start a business. And I used to really enjoy blogging, and I am taking this workshop with you because I have been feeling like that Seth Godin's, call to do something every day is really vibrant in me, and I just really want to apply my passion for writing to this new business. And I think it does give me an edge in the herbalism world. There aren't a lot of contemporary herbalists writing blogs. So my question is, my previous blogs have been a lot about the writing process and personal processes, and not really professional. And a lot of the work that I do has to do with like people's personal stories of health and wellness, and oftentimes difficult emotions and trauma and things of the sort. That is kind of my product brand is around these issues. How do I keep from making something too personal but still approachable? How would you navigate, or how would you advise someone to navigate that space in writing? Thank you.
Great question. So first, let me ask, when you mentioned that your clients, the work that you're doing is personal, perhaps personal issues involved, would you be writing about are you worried about being too personal about other people or about yourself?
Sometimes I think like in my previous blog, I would definitely be more open to sharing, personal stories. But yeah, I'm tackling things like transgenerational trauma, sociopolitical issues, health difficulties, and, and addressing those things with addressing self-care. And oftentimes self-care can really be helpful for folks recovering from addiction, for instance. So all those kind of difficult stories that are, emotive and things like that, in my personal life and in other people, like in clients that I've seen or friends and family, really inform the like business part of why I'm doing and why I'm creating these products. So yeah, I'm hesitant to like share too much, but I want to still be, I don't know, I still want to be personal.
Right.
I think it needs to be, right?
Well, I mean, one layer lens you could put on this is, what would you, if you were having a conversation at a business event in your field, or with your customers, what would you say in conversation? Assuming that you wouldn't overshare in conversation. I think some people tend to like write deeper than they would actually speak with someone. So you could put that lens on it, just to kind of give a double check to yourself whether you're going too deep.
Yes.
You could also ask for feedback when you're writing from somebody else. I mean, honestly, for business, I would kind of err on the conservative side while keeping it real, but
Okay.
I'd be a little conservative.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we're winding down here. Any thoughts on the biggest errors that people might make in blogging? Is there anything from your observation?
Again, just repeating, like starting, and then stopping. But then, I guess because we're talking about business blogs, there is a certain level of professionalism, that you'd want to demonstrate. So even though I've said personal is really important, it still needs to be, professional. So writing that you're proud of.
And here's this is a question from Doris. Does anyone remember the newspaper column Ask Abby? Oh, I certainly do. Can a person do something similar in the blog format?
Sure. You just have to kind of think through, are you going to have people ask you the questions, and just being careful about people's identity, I guess. So if you set it up similarly to the newspaper column, I think you'd probably have that covered and be interesting.
Okay, great question, Doris. Any other final questions as we wind down here? Well, you've certainly given us a lot of things to think about, Nancy, and I really appreciate it. And for those, tomorrow's program is creating achievement stories, which is more directed towards job search. And next week we have a business mixer and starting a business. You always are filled with lots of information. And someone's asking about the August workshop. If you're on our mailing list, you'll be alerted to that. I believe it's August 10th. I'd have to look this up, but it's a joint program with the Redwood City Library, and we'll have 4 authors speaking, and I'll be the facilitator. But again, Nancy, and do check out Startup Decoder. You're just filled with lots of great information about startups. You really are. It's very deep. So on behalf of Phase 2 Careers and Nancy Branca and Renaissance Entrepreneurship Center, have a good day, everyone. And hopefully we see you at a program soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.